Welcome back to the channel, everyone, and today we'll be reacting to another internet historian video on their Incognito channel. This is the Roswell Incident, and apparently it's satire. So, what isn't satire here?
This evening we're going to explore the story that almost everyone gets wrong. There are hundreds
Everyone gets everything wrong on everything.
of feature-length documentaries on the subject, and all of them are a waste of your time, because this is the true story of the Roswell Incident.
One of the true stories of the Roswell
The story begins
Incident,
before
right?
the crash in 1947. It begins with a scientist, Professor Maurice Ying, who is helping the US military develop new weapons and tools in the Second World War. So he discovers one thing, and he invents another. His specialization is in oceanography, important to the military because they want to be able to detect submarines in local waters and develop more sophisticated versions of their own. The discovery is the sound channel. I'll explain why this is important, just stay with me.
Okay.
It turns out that there's this spot at about 1,000 feet deep in the ocean where the salinity, temperature, and density of the water prevent sound waves from being able to easily carry either up or down. So instead, they travel much further horizontally without...
That's actually pretty cool. I had no idea that even existed. And I've watched a lot of stuff on oceanography type stuff. Primarily because I got stuck watching, remember that incident with that weird submarine that basically got crushed at the bottom of the ocean about a year ago? Yeah, I started watching a bunch of videos around that area, but I never... man, I forgot the name of that sub, though. That was like the Titan or something like that. Anyway, but yeah, I didn't know about the sound channel. That's pretty cool.
Dissipating. Why is this important or interesting? Well,
it is
it
interesting.
means that large disturbances underwater at this precise depth can be heard for thousands of miles away if using the right equipment.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So Maurice starts thinking about the practical applications, and he comes up with an invention. He calls it a sofar sphere. Here's an example of how it works. Let's say you're a pilot fighting the Japanese over the Pacific Ocean. You are momentarily distracted and your plane goes down. Well, now you're bobbing around in the middle of the ocean and nobody knows where you are. What do? Well, you reach into your survival kit and drop a sofar sphere. Think of it like a pocket-sized depth charge, except without the explosives. It has no moving parts, no electronics. Instead, it's very precisely calibrated so that when it sinks to 1,000 feet, it implodes. The sound waves carry a couple of thousand miles to the shoreline, where they've installed a bunch of underwater microphones.
I mean, that's definitely a cool concept, but I suppose you could program something. Well, you wouldn't program it because there's no electronics in it. I guess you'd have to find a material that crushes around 1,000 feet, but also sinks. Okay.
Then, using some basic
'Cause you'd have to be
trigonometry,
pretty,
you can compare the time
accurate,
it takes
right?
for the sound to hit one mic from another to triangulate where the sound came from. And like that, you suddenly know where your downed pilot is. But before it was able to be used, the war ended and the device was shelved. Although, Professor Ying was kept on the military payroll because a whole new conflict was ramping up, the Cold War.
I mean, at the time, it was definitely a cool device, and then GPS and other things overtook that.
The concern here was missiles and nuclear weapons, so attention shifted from the ocean to the atmosphere. So he thinks, wait a minute, if there's a sound channel in the ocean, maybe there's one in the sky too. Turns out there is, at 155,000 feet. So, if there's a large sound, let's say a nuclear explosion in Russia, you should be able to hear that all the way in the United States if you have a bunch of microphones set up at this height. That means you know the exact location, time, and potential power of every single above-ground nuclear test being
This is about the Roswell incident, huh?
conducted by your enemy, well before you had anything like satellite technology. They call this Project Mogul.
I was expecting something totally different. This is actually really interesting.
It was a series of high-altitude weather balloons with sensitive microphones attached. In 1947, one of them fell from the sky and crashed down in a rancher's backyard, and some people with large imaginations said it was aliens. The military said it was a weather balloon. Then there were some conflicting reports, and people said it was a cover-up. Well, of course there was. It sure beats having the Russians find out about this technology. In the following decades, better ways of detecting nuclear tests were invented, primarily seismographers, and the sound channel fell out of use. In 1992, following the fall of the Berlin Wall, all of this information became declassified, and since it has been totally available for the public to read. And
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That makes more sense.
that is the story of Roswell. No
That actually makes way more sense what actually happened. Although, I think the other version is a little bit more fun. Oh, the other downside is, causes a lot more people to be
aliens,
crazy, though.
just a weather balloon and a bunch of microphones. Good night.
The reality is, that, the same people that, are, like, addicted to any one specific thing, like aliens or whatever, would also just be addicted to something else. So, this, in theory, is one of the more harmless things, unless they, do something crazy with it. But yeah, that was actually pretty interesting. That one makes a lot of sense. It could be wrong, but it makes a lot of sense. Anyway, have a good day, everyone.